Let's actually talk about what's called agoraphobia. So, there's something known as agoraphobia. It is the fear of going outside. There's also extreme social anxiety, which is, I forget what that's called. There's some really technical name to it. But the thing about these things is that oftentimes, like, therapy can help with them a lot. There are medications you can take as well, like anti-anxieties that can bring that down. But in Carl's condition, well, in Carl's position, in Carl's case, like my baseline assumption is that he's just had so much failure in his life in some ways that he's just concluded that that's all he'll ever get. This is an incredibly easy trap to fall into. And the other thing that's really important with social anxiety is the belief that we're just going to keep getting whatever we have gotten in the past, especially when it's negative. Because remember, your brain is hardwired to hyper focus on the negatives. Very important. Your brain is always looking for the tiger that's on the other side of that corner out of sight. It's always looking for a threat. So whenever bad stuff happens to you, whenever bad things are going on, your brain wants to focus on that and assume that more bad stuff will continue happening. So failure will lead to further failure, will lead to more failure and more failure and more failure until you die. Basically, that's how your brain sort of works. So your brain actually wants to avoid that failure by isolating itself from it. So the easiest thing about this is some kids really hate math because they did math in like middle and high school and it was really difficult for them. And so they just concluded, I'm bad at math. And so from that point onward, they avoid math like the plague. Problem is, math is a skill. It's just a bunch of rules that eventually get hardwired into your system. So, by avoiding it, they're actually perpetuating that failure. Whereas if they were to focus on each little part of math and learn each individual skill one by one, which is what you do in like Algebra 1, then Algebra 2, then Geometry, Trigonometry, and Calculus, you're learning a set of skills that, when learned one by one, allow you to then essentially go up to the next category of skills that are based on those. It's a foundational thing. So by avoiding it, by avoiding that failure or that sense of failure, they're actually putting holes in those foundations because they don't want to practice them, they don't want to focus on them, and as a result, they have holes that make further skills being learned more difficult. And so because they are perpetually believing, okay, well, failure will lead to more failure, it does. If you've ever heard the term self-fulfilling prophecy, this is kind of an example of that. So what you want to do whenever you're in that kind of position is try to think about positives. Be aware that your brain is hardwired. So like with dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, there's this whole push where you're basically needing to look at your thoughts and understand that these things are based on evolutionary hard-coded things in your brain, tendencies that your brain has. But these things are beneath your consciousness. They're subconscious. And so think about it this way. If you're a caveman, okay? And let's say you're Cro-Magnons, so you have throwing spears. You're not a Neanderthal. They never developed throwing spears. And maybe you are just absolutely terrible at throwing a spear. And you've tried and practiced, you just can't get it right. Do you keep trying to learn how to throw the spear, or do you focus on something else? Maybe you're really good at cooking things. Maybe you're phenomenal at butchering. Maybe you're great at just going and flushing things out. Well, as it turns out, if you focus on what you're good at, and you build on those things, that allows you to fulfill a niche that's kind of needed, right? It's kind of hard to hit something with a spear when it's hiding in cover. If someone can flush it out into the open, you can now hit it with a spear way more easily. So we sort of evolved to focus on what we were good at. Good at jumping? Great. We'll have you focus on jumping. We kind of need people who do that. You are great at like holding on to things and climbing things. Great. Well, we need someone to help us build a bridge. And that kind of means we need someone to be able to climb to the other side of that cliff so we can throw you ropes. So you can pitten those ropes, and you can use pittons to make a bridge to start setting the foundation for it. So you want to focus on the positives, what you're good at, and then look at your negatives and start seeing if there's ways you can fill that in. So,
yeah. So that's like, I read something, it's like I think it's also called the golem effect, where it's basically self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you have low expectations, you'll meet those, or you reduce your effort, or something like that.
Correct.
Because basically, if you expect bad results, you will pretty much make those come true.
Correct.
So yeah, that makes sense. But it's also, if you can get inspired by doing what you're good at, then it eventually, I think a lot of people, they get to the point where they realize if they work on at least some of their weaknesses, that it could actually improve their strengths in a certain way. I guess at that point it could be like min-maxing, but it's useful to build confidence useful to build confidence by doing what you're good at. Yes. And then you'll be more confident in yourself and, dealing with other things. Probably deal with things that you know you're not great at, but not especially bad at, and that could help you improve in other areas too. And plus, if you're doing what you're good at and not bad at, then you could also learn some things that you can apply to working towards improving your weaknesses and the stuff that you're bad at. Because there are ways to improve what you're weak. There are ways to improve your weaknesses. It's just a matter of motivation and determination, just keeping on, which is usually the hardest part. You feel like you suck at everything, and then you're kind of, you're going to get demotivated. Even doing stuff that you're good at, you're going to lose motivation to do it eventually.
Yes.
So now there is also something else, something I heard from an engineer that I think might be related to this, and it's the difference between people that kind of breeze through their education versus people that, kind of struggle through a lot of their classes. And he said that usually the people that become engineers aren't especially the super smart people. It's the people who just, endured through failure and difficulty enough to actually become an engineer. Because, and his justification was people that have a history of struggling through classes, they know what it's like to struggle through a class, come out of it with a pretty good grade and feel like they've gone through it. People that breeze through classes, they don't really get that. So when they do actually hit a class that they struggle with, when that eventually does happen, they don't know how to cope. They stumble, they start getting the idea that they've reached as far as they can go. This is the highest amount of intelligence that they have. They can't continue on anymore, and they lose confidence, and they lose steam, and they may give up, and then they get all salty. Yep. People who have struggled before, they'll get another hard class, and you're just like, oh yeah, well, it's just another class that I'm going to have difficulty with. Might as well just buckle down.
Yeah. Well.
And the sad thing is, the real smart people, they could just jump in with the crowd of people who have struggled through most of their classes, learn a whole lot more from the people who have always had to struggle through classes, and still come out on top better than they were if they just learned the material, because now they're learning how to struggle, how to keep their confidence up, how to relate better with their classmates and colleagues and make new friends. But yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but sometimes that will be the case. They'll just hit a wall, try to bash through it, and then just give up immediately. When everyone else who have struggled before, just like, it's just another challenge. It's not a wall. It's not a barrier. Just gotta work through it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you get into a hard class.
So,
it's like, well, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Time to keep going.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of like difficulty in very rare cases is a hard limit. Like if somebody has like damage to part of their brain that manages being able to do math, like they have extreme dyscalculia, the inability to do math. It's like dyslexia, but for mathematics. Like if they have an extreme version of that, math probably isn't going to be their forte. Even as hard as they try, they might be able to do it, but like at that point, like the challenge is probably going to be borderline Sisyphean? Pushing a boulder uphill.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I guess at some point. Yeah. Well, I've heard also that people that have struggled, they have like a moderate amount of, what was it, dyscalculia?
Yeah, dyscalculia.
Like they have continued on, decided to really buckle down and work on the math, and they become like mathematicians and engineers and stuff. Like they decide they're just going to really take it on.
Yeah.
And the same thing with like people with dyslexia. They buckle down real hard. They learn, the grammar. They learn everything, and they go on to be actual famous writers.
So I brought this up before. I have surface dyslexia, and I have a BA in English. So
yeah, that means when you touch a surface, you think, though the smooth glass is actually really rough concrete. That's right. That's what it is, right? Surface dyslexia.
Yep, totally. When I'm reading Braille, I just can't read it.
Yeah, you're reading Braille, you think it's actually Japanese Braille.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so this is konnichiwa. What? I mean, what?
You fill water and think it's dry.
Moist is dry. War is peace.
War is peace.
Everything is 1984. Everything. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. Like I'm talking the extreme example where, like, it's really just it's so much of a struggle. It's just not even worth it. They'll be like 60 by the time they're able to get through calculus. I'm trying every single year if they can even get through it. But yeah, as you said, if it's more moderate, then yeah, people can get through it, no problem. The thing is, for the vast majority of people, at worst, they're in like that moderate zone where all you have to do is struggle through it. There's actually something that we see in education, because I was an educator for a little bit, which is when you look at gifted kids, they tend to start off on the webcam. It starts on this side, so they tend to start off doing really well, but then they decline as time goes on through life. Their success seems to go down for them, and so this is usually incredibly confusing because it's like, what do you mean this kid has this child has an IQ of 140? What the hell's going on? Why are they failing at life? Like, what is happening? And what we see is everything was so easy for them, they never ran into a wall.
They never learned to try.
Yeah, it was always easy, so now when they hit something where they're actually struggling with it, they, instead of getting that feeling of, okay, this is difficult, I'm going to buckle down, I'm going to ask for help, they say, wow, what's wrong with me? Am I mentally handicapped all of a sudden? What is going on? And then they get a sense of shame. And that shame stops them from reaching out for help. And they just try to buckle down and reread this thing that is presenting the information in a way that does not make sense to them over and over and over. And then they give up and they try something else. In almost every single case, when you don't understand something, it's not that you can't understand it. It is how it's being presented to you. That's the big thing. This is one of those reasons why in education, there's always been a dialogue about AI and about AI teachers and stuff like that. And the big thing with that is, imagine that every single student has what is effectively the equivalent of a personal tutor who has a PhD in every single subject and can explain every single concept in about 1,000 different ways. If you don't understand it, it can recontextualize and explain it in a way that makes sense to you. But here's the thing that's so friggin' scary. Well, not scary. It's scary to educators, but it's amazing for students, which is this AI would have been built, or this program would have been building basically a library about how you think, and it would understand, it would be able to conclude which ways of presenting the idea are going to make the most sense to you. What analogies will actually allow you to understand the concept. And so if it knows you're really good with certain concepts, it will focus on those to teach you other things. And the simple reality is, most of how you learn is just connecting ideas together. Like, a thought is literally just a series of neurons firing in a sequence. So if you can take an idea and you can start connecting ideas together to basically take advantage of those neuron chains, you could potentially teach someone almost everything very quickly. So, yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting. I mean, granted, they would have this hyper-specific way of thinking about the world. Like, maybe they just really like trains, train meme hitting someone as they go by. But I like trains. But
I like turtles gets eaten by a turtle.
yeah. But I mean, like, maybe the kid just really liked trains. And so, like, all of their knowledge is train related. And, like, that's how they understand things. Like, how does blood supply work? Well, the train station is your heart. And each blood cell is a little train, and it conducts its cargo, oxygen, through your body, right?
I'm getting Waterboy vibes. Mama said that the blood is like a train station.
But here's the thing, it works. Right? Like, try to explain derivatives to someone who has never been through calculus. How I understand derivatives is for those of you who don't know, derivatives are something you learn about in Calculus 1. And the way I understand them is, it is an equation that is designed to tell you how something is, like, transitioning over time or over some sort of condition. So in trigonometry, to give you an example, let's say your professor or teacher tells you to calculate a shadow's length based on the sun or the star's position, whichever one you're at. We'll just say sun because it's the sun. And so in trigonometry, you know how tall the post is, its dimensions, and you're able to calculate this shadow based on that. In Calculus 1, with a derivative, you can modify that equation to tell you how long and where that shadow is based on the position of the sun. And there's that calculation that you put into the equation that keeps track of where the sun is. And so all you have to do is just plug a number into that one part of the equation, and it spits out how big the shadow is, or how big the shadow's area is, whatever you're trying to calculate. So that's a derivative.
I guess another example would be if you see like Looney Tune or any movies where it has like a hallway and there's like the shadow of a guy moving down the hallway. You can't see the guy, but you can see the shadow. The derivative would allow you to basically estimate where the shadow is going to be based on, you have like the light is static, the hallway is a certain length, and the person is like he's going to remain the same height. Just the shadow is going to get longer depending on how close the person is to the light. So as the person's moving away or towards you, you'd be able to plug in, I guess, the distance relative of the guy from the light and see and be able to calculate basically the size of the shadow.
Yep. That's it. That's it's basically the same idea with like the post and the sun, but now it's like a guy that you can't see in a hallway and like some sort of light at the end. And so you're making calculations. Yeah.
I only remember that because I remember that was something our grandfather laughed at, and I think it was like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It was like this teeny tiny little guy, but his shadow was just fucking massive.
Yeah.
It's like a humongous shadow, and then like this little guy appears like a Elmer Fudd, but looked like a abominable snowman-sized shadow. And he's just like, big shadow, little guy.
Yeah. So like with just those two analogies, the idea of what a derivative has already been made clear to people who were struggling with derivatives. Like, how do I explain this thing? Here's an analogy. Does that analogy make sense to you? If it does, congratulations. You understand, at least in a very general idea, what a derivative is. It's like, do you play video games? Do you read books? Do you work on this or that? I mean, based on what your knowledge base is, different analogies make sense all of a sudden. So in education, there's that push. I mean, a lot of educators are kind of scared of AI doing this because so how education works right now is we basically just build in foundations. And so like Algebra 1 is just a basic foundation of math. Algebra 2 is a foundation on top of that where we get into variables and now you're solving for what those variables are, and then geometry, calculus, and all these things build on each other. In times of yore, in the previous age, when that kind of education system didn't exist, you instead had tutors who would tutor a student on a specific thing. Now, the thing is, a lot of knowledge, especially in math, you can build in a fairly vertical slice. So you don't need to do these horizontal foundations necessarily with math. You can do vertical slices. It's just outside of that vertical slice, you won't know anything. So that means usually after the tutor satisfies the tutee's knowledge in that vertical slice, they're able to then start transitioning to other things that are related to that until they eventually fill in all of the knowledge base. So a fun example of this is, I think it's Pythagorean's theorem.
Yeah, a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
I'm thinking of something else.
You're dumb squared.
I don't know what it's something, but I forget what it's about. But at the end of the entire sequence, you end up with two numbers and you're supposed to invert them. It's like Algebra 2 stuff. And so you're supposed to take these and basically multiply both of them by -1. So if they're negatives, they become positives. If they're positive, they become negative. And so the reason you do that, you'll learn in calculus. Because you learn what that theorem is the shorthand of. And with a vertical slice, You could say, well, why do we invert them? And then basically a tutor or an AI like this would basically say, no problem, I got you, we'll explain it, but we have to do all this stuff first. So for you to understand that, I need to teach you this sort of like um, very steep mountain of knowledge. So we're going to start with that and get out all the stuff that we have to learn for you to understand this one concept. We're going to go through all of that. And then eventually you get to that point where you understand why you have to invert these two numbers. You understand how it actually works. And now your knowledge is satisfied. So now you can learn other things, right?
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, but it is like you do have to do all this work.
Yeah.
It's kind of like telling somebody, it's like someone asks, why are we stuck to the ground like this? And you can say, oh, it's because it's gravity. But for you to understand gravity, you're going to have to go through physics, and we're going to have to look at matter and density and just all this other stuff where you can finally understand, like, oh, all matter is made up of tiny little atoms that all have like an atomic number, which equates to how dense the atoms are, and that's all this, and how the Earth is this fucking big.
Yeah.
And it's got this big force, and we could put two pencils next to each other on strings and watch them start pulling at each other, because even pencils have, amazing as it is, even pencils have mass and gravity, and they pull at each other.
Yep.
Just all kinds of stuff like that.
Yep. And this is one of the best ways that people can learn. You find that one thing they're curious about, and then you chase that to its end, and they will learn a bunch of information on the way.
That's like a good way to keep your motivation up too, because if it's something difficult and you know it's difficult, just the day-to-day grind is going to be kind of hard. Just like, it's kind of like that with anything, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're building muscle, if you're trying to bulk, and you're like, I want to get big, and you do a workout, and it's like you approach every set with trepidation, because it's like, I know I'm going to struggle, it's going to hurt, it's going to suck while I'm doing it, but I really want to do it. If you don't have any kind of motivation, you'll probably do a few workouts and be like, no, it's too painful. But if you slap a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the wall and be like, I want to look like this bitch, and it's going to be a source of motivation. It's going to be like if you watch Pumping Iron several times and listen to Arnold talk about blowing out his biceps or blowing up his biceps and the feeling of blood rushing into the muscle and to the bicep, how there's nothing better. It's almost like sex. Hey, yeah, it's gonna help. It's gonna help. And if you're trying to min-max lots of protein, just everything else, that's gonna help too.
Yeah, and there's something else. Go ahead.
It's just a way of finding motivation, because something else, like going back to math, doing math, it can be hard to learn all the different rules and laws and everything. But if you're motivated by like some kind of interest, like you really want to find out, like you really want to know how this works, how stuff works, and that's real interesting to you, then yeah, that could actually be a major motivation and just keeping you going. Because if that's all you really need, that you really want to know how stuff works, and the answer is you have to learn math, it's like, well, I really want to find out how this works, and I'm going to have to burn through hours and hours of math and learn tons of laws to really figure it out, but that's going to satisfy my curiosity, and that's what I really want to do. So that's going to be the thing. So just find that motivation and hold on to it, and slap a photo, slap a picture of someone on the wall if you have to, or just write it out. Just do something so you can have that readily accessible. The simpler it is, the better it is. It's what they say, keep it simple, stupid. I'm not calling you stupid, but it's like, keep it really simple. Keep the idea of really stupid. It's as stupidly simple as it possibly can. That's your motivation.
Yeah, and just to build on that, like yeah, there is the phrase "keep it simple, stupid." That's mostly just to make it like kiss the entire word. It's also trying to bring up the idea of basically saying, "Hey, we overthink stuff because we think we're too smart." Like, oh no, I have this problem. I need to overthink this hyper complicated solution to this thing. When it's like, no, you don't need to do this thing that causes, the mountain to shift a little bit so that dirt eventually makes its way down to your garden. You can get a wheelbarrow and just go get some dirt and bring it here. It's fine. You don't need to do all this extra like convoluted BS to make the thing happen. Like
You
sometimes
don't need like this big assembly line type style treadmill thing. I forget what they're called, but you don't need that. You just need a treadmill and a little elbow grease with a shovel, and you can get that down to your garden. Especially if all you need is like a couple shovelfuls, and then you're happy.
Yeah.
And you might never need it again.
Yeah, and it's
you need to go through the process of building something.
Yeah, and I mean, building something is a good idea. Like it will automate things for you, but it's just one of those things where it's like you don't need this hyper complicated solution. Like there's this thing in science that's called Occam's razor or Occam's razor, depending on how you want to say it, and like what that's sort of the investigative equivalent of keep it simple, which is Occam's razor is a philosophy that basically says the simplest, most straightforward solution that makes the most sense is probably the answer. Give you an example. Someone's skin is turning yellow. Okay, well, it could be something in their diet, but it's probably jaundice. So
not the big lady. It's probably just a liver disease.
Yeah, it's
type issue.
There's probably something going on with their liver, so check out their liver. Once you eliminate that, once you rule that out, like, okay, well, maybe there's something more exotic going on. A lot of doctors who get out of med school fall victim of this because it was I think it was as Chubby Emu brought up, and then there's another guy, the Bee Whoop guy. If you know him, you know him. And they both talk about how someone will come in and they'll be like, oh, I have these symptoms. And then the doctor goes for like these extreme, exotic, sort of explanations or diseases that this person could have. And it's like, no, they probably have something completely ordinary. Rule out the completely ordinary stuff first. And
yeah, it's like if someone's skin is turning blue, it's like, it could be just simple, like, lack of oxygen to a certain area, or is that like the whole thing? And then they eventually get to, are you consuming certain things that have a lot of silver in them?
Especially if they're up and walking around and talking to you.
Yeah. You look like you're suffocating.
So for those of you who don't know, there were these politicians who, I think there was this politician and his family. There was this, so I'll start with the idea. So silver is an antiseptic. So that means it kills bacteria. And so there was this politician who, let me go even further back. So what we found throughout history was that people who lived near silver deposits tended to have bluish skin for some reason, and no one really knew why. This is probably where the idea of like blue frost giants came from. It's like people who just for some reason are blue, and because they didn't know any better back, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, they just assumed they were monsters. As you know, they're blue. They're blue and they live in the middle of nowhere. So this, I think it was like in the 50s, the 70s, or the 80s, there was this politician who started drinking like silvered water. If you guys are wondering, by the way, holy water is water with silver in it. That's why it doesn't grow mold on it ever, and that's why you can pour it on infections, and it will seem to cure infections. It's because it's because of the silver in the water. It makes it antiseptic. So, hey, you can believe that God is like on this water and making it super holy and stuff. But really, it's the silver is the materials version of it. If you want to believe that there's a divine aspect to it, more power to you. So these I'm not trying to be condescending either. Like I'm just saying, like if you want to believe that there's something spiritual going on, I literally can't disprove that. So have at it.
You know, there could be there's like three big jugs of water, and the man says, "This water shall be simple water. This jug water be holy water. And this third jug here, this'll be wine. Hallelujah, it's wine."
And he chugs the entire third container.
You go, hallelujah, it's wine. Woo!
So, so these politicians, this politician and his family, they started drinking silvered water. And over the years, this turned their skin blue. This guy, I think it was in the House of Representatives or the Senate in the U.S., or maybe he was just a state representative or something in the state councils, state Senate, state House. But the thing is, his skin turned blue, and the explanation was the silver. So yeah, like literally, Terry's idea is spot on. It's just like, okay, we have somebody and their skin is blue and they're unconscious for some reason. Oh crap, I guess they are asphyxiating. Let's go and check their pulse, and okay, well, their pulse is fine. Let's check their breathing. Their breathing is fine. We like tap their shoulders to wake them up for CPR, and they wake up and they're like, "Who are you? Get out of my house." And it's like, well, what the hell? Why is this person blue all of a sudden? And so at that point, it's like, well, they're clearly not asphyxiating, so I guess something else is going on. Right? But if you see a blue person and they're unconscious, your initial thought is they're not breathing. Like they have no blood flow. So CPR and all that, crunch all their ribs. And yeah. But, then they wake up and talk to you. It's like, okay, well, this is weird. Are they undead or something? That would be the exotic solution. They're undead. Evidently, necromantic magic exists.
Right.
But, yeah. So, yeah. Simple solution. So, the investigative version of KISS is Occam's razor. But, yeah, keep solution simple. Rule out the easiest, most straightforward ways to do things. Yeah. That sort of just went in like a huge tangent to prove the point, but I think it works. There will be at least somebody out there who understands now because of that. But
and
yeah,
that is good.
And so with Carl, to get back to Carl, the thing is, so we focus on negatives. You want to try and focus on positives. There's in like corporate speech and in psychology and education, you hear about these things called growth mindsets, and I forget what the other one is, stagnant mindset, set mindset, fixed. And the growth mindset is you look at a challenge and you move forward from that challenge. You embrace it and you understand that you can learn something from it and you can grow from that challenge. A fixed mindset is you run into a challenge, you say, well, I just can't do that. And so you give up. There's something that I have put together recently, which is based on trauma, and this is actually relevant to Carl, which is when you get traumatized by something, that kind of takes a snapshot of who you are at that point and traps you there. So, as an example, in like mental hospitals, you'll run into 50-year-olds who act like they're 26. And so you'll be sitting there wondering, like, how is this 50-year-old acting like someone half their age? This doesn't make any sense. And then you start digging into their trauma and you find out that when they were 26, this horrible thing happened to them. Maybe their parents died. Maybe that's when they had their first marriage ended and they got into drugs or something. But that's when this bad thing happened to them, and then they started coping. And that bad thing happening to them, that's the trauma that has sort of set their personality. And then everything else is a coping mechanism that's around that piece of trauma that's basically acting as a big lock. As a big lock on their ability to move forward. It's a big chastity cage on growth, if you will. And so once they are able to get rid of that and get rid of that trauma, then they grow as a person. So if we look at Carl, literally what's happening with Carl is he got in a car accident and other bad stuff has happened to him. He had a rough breakup, and that has sort of snapshotted him into who he was when that breakup happened. And then again, it snapshotted him again when he got into a car accident. And these things are just building off of each other to make him, and here's the other thing, he sees other people growing and enjoying their lives, and he feels shame because he knows deep down he should be growing alongside them. And he also, like, I'm pretty sure Carl, like, hears what Jenna is saying, and the reason he gets upset, the reason he gets sad whenever she's chewing him out for basically just giving up, is because of that shame that he has associated with those locks that he has in his life. She's growing. She's moved past these things. He's still stuck. And so he has that shame. And, you know, it's just kind of how that goes. And that acts as like something that inhibits people from actually moving forward, that shame. Which is why it's important to get rid of that stuff so you can move forward.
That's where therapy would really come in handy to help them process that, move through it, understand it.
Yeah. It's like...
And then find a useful plan for moving forward.
Yeah, like just imagine if Carl, instead of fighting with Jenna, was like, okay, what do you think I should do? Let me tell you about all my problems. You want to help me? Cool. Let's talk about it.
I don't know what she would do. Like, I don't know if she would stop and listen, or she would pause and be like, I'm not really into counseling. I'm more into like experimental psychology. Like, okay, well,
yeah, no, it's
what you're
just
doing
like,
is not helping then.
Yeah, it's like what you're doing is literally making it worse.
Yeah, so you're actively hurting, not helping.
Yeah, and I think like Jenna is trying to help Carl in a way. When people feel discomfort, that is when they make actions. When you're comfortable, when you're happy, when you're getting your needs met, you really don't push for change all that much. Like, change doesn't happen when everything's sunshine and rainbows. Change tends to happen in the abyss. At your lowest point is when you evolve, is when you grow. Yeah. So,
which is unfortunate, because then you really just have to get covered in shit before you really start to take action and try to clean yourself off. Yeah. So I guess it's like not even covered in shit. It's when the boils start, because you've let your skin be covered in shit for so long that you just can't stand the abscesses growing in your skin. You just need to get away from it because it hurts. And so you finally start trying to clean yourself off. Rediscover soap, just everything else.
Yeah.
And find antibiotics. Take a dip in some silver water.
That would do it.
Just try something.
That would actually help a lot.
That would help a lot. Maybe even get a sharp stick, set it on fire, and while it's still blazing hot, think it's gonna hurt more, but at least the constant high amount of pain that I have is gonna end. So then you just jam that red hot stick into your arm. What was it?
Into the boil specifically.
Everything. Yeah.
Let's be clear here.
Yeah. just jabbing yourself to jab yourself.
You're
trying to
lancing
avoid pain.
boils.
Yeah, you're lancing boils to specifically get rid of them,
Yeah, to heal
not
yourself.
just hurt yourself more. If I hurt myself more, maybe the boil will stop hurting. It doesn't work that way.
You just break your pinky. Ah, my finger. We're all just major pain now.
Yeah, like yeah. Ah, my finger. Yeah, walk it off.
Yeah, so
Dating ourselves, aren't we?
so it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, when you are whenever I worked in addiction, so there was always this sign that said something along the lines of, if it hurts, good. If you're uncomfortable, that's great. That's where growth is. There's another one that said, I'm comfortable on one side and then I'm growing on the other. And it just has these two characters that are personifying these saying, this isn't going to work out. Because, like, when people do coping mechanisms that are malformed, maladaptive, like using drugs or something, like literally that's them making themselves comfortable. Instead of instead of actually growing, they're just making themselves comfortable for now. Why do some people just read books all day and ignore everything else, all their responsibilities? Why do some people play video games all day and ignore all their responsibilities? Why do some people go to the gym every single day and ignore all their responsibilities? It's because that makes them comfortable. It makes them feel happy. Makes them feel happy.
That could also be escapism, right?
That's literally what I'm talking about. It's the maladaptive coping mechanism of escapism.
Right. Let's talk about that for a quick second, because it almost sounds like a bit of hypocrisy for Jenna to go after Carl. I know it's not, because she had it a whole lot worse than Carl does right now.
Mm-hmm.
But she practiced escapism. She is hella into manga and anime, and she used that as her escape from Echo and escape from her abusive household with her parents. So she would dive into manga and anime, basically live in those worlds, just in the books, in the videos, the TV shows, the animes. And Carl, he's like his escapism is, it used to be comic books and now it's video games. But it's like both of them. So Jenna should have at least some degree of empathy for what Carl's going through and his escapism, simply because she experienced escapism too. Just her circumstances were literally much, much worse. And I just actually 100% different, because Carl's not living in poverty like she was.
Yeah, Carl is by far more comfortable than Jenna was. And so you can claim hypocrisy. And like, here's the thing about people. Everyone is a hypocrite. Everyone on the planet is a hypocrite.
Yeah, you hypocrite.
Yeah, I'm a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. The people watching this, you're hypocrites too.
It's like Oprah. You're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. Everyone's a hypocrite.
And so, like, the thing to keep in mind here is, like, that's okay. Like, it is what it is. So when we look at coping mechanisms, this is just a big thing. Like, no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No one's perfect. But, like, it's kind of the big thing. No one's perfect. Everyone screws stuff up. Everyone does things wrong. And
it's fine.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Like, the thing that really separates successful people from unsuccessful people, people who are moving forward, who are progressing, who are growing, from people who are not, is that the people who progress, who grow, who improve, they understand that failure and doing things wrong is just part of the process. Like, you have to screw things up to move forward. Absolutely required. As we said previously, you have those really gifted kids where everything is super easy for them. Yeah, everything's super easy. And so when things get hard, when they struggle, they collapse because they because they never had to struggle, they never had to do any of that. They never failed. And because they never failed, what was really happening is they were just resting on their laurels of being incredibly intelligent. But now that that's not necessarily enough, they actually have to put in the elbow grease. They have to put in the mental effort. It's like now they're faced with failure. And so instead of accepting that they're not perfect, instead of accepting that, yes, we are all failures in our own ways, but you get up, you dust yourself off, or you let someone else help pick you up and dust you off and then shove you back into it, which is, I think, is what Jenna's core motivation with Carl is. Like, yeah, we'll get to that, but it's the whole thing of you have to just keep going at it until it works. There was this guy in India, I think I brought him up before, and I think there was a mountain between his village and some place that he needed to get to. I think it was like a major town, had a hospital. And so to get to his town, normally they had to take this really crappy mountain road. So it would take like, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours to get there. So this dude, I don't know, like 20 or something, 15, decided to just go take a pickaxe and a shovel and start digging a freaking road through this mountain. And so like 30, 40 years later, there's now a road in between that major town and his village. It's like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to get there. And think of all the times he's probably failed in making that road. All the times he's run into a rock that he just cannot pickaxe through. Does he give up? Probably not. I mean, the road's there, so he obviously didn't. Did he get dynamite and just blow it up? I don't know. Maybe he's an American. Did he?
No, I think he would just shoot them out and they'll just fall over.
Yeah, did he just rent a tank and shoot the boulder? Did he like dig around the boulder? Like, I don't know. But
M1 Abram, more like M1 Roadmaker. Boom!
So the whole thing is like, yeah, there's little failures everywhere. And part of getting past that is recognizing that this is a temporary setback. The only permanent setback you ever have that you cannot recover from is death. That's it. And once that happens, you don't have to worry about it. You're dead.
Well, of course, that's not true if you're an anime.
I mean, yeah, you could get isekai'd into another world. We literally don't know what happens when people die. So for all we know, it's like,
you could just pull a Goku and get resurrected by a bunch of fucking balls.
Then you like come back to life and you're like, oh, hey, I don't have heart cancer anymore, or whatever Goku had.
The heart virus.
Oh,
wow.
No. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Like an old Wilson over here. Look at that.
Like,
wow.
You know, for all we know, people die and then they get isekai'd to a different world. It's like I have a heart attack and when I wake up and they're like, you're the shield hero now. And it's like, oh no, I've seen this one.
Fuck. He was like, oh, I was 90 years old. I passed away. And now I'm a My Little Pony.
Yeah, I just imagine like you die and then you wake up and everything's all warm and sticky and like compressing. You're like, what the hell is going on?
Baby Bolt biceps.
Huh. Yeah, this is weird. Everything's so dark. Why can't I hear voices? And then like, I don't know, a few months later, it's just like, oh man, there's all this pressure. And then you see some dude in like green scrubs with a green mask on. It's like, oh, okay. I think I know this one.
Oh yeah, I think I'm about to get amnesia, right? Who am I? What am I? Wah, wah.
This is gonna hurt, right? Snip, snip. Oh! Why'd you cut that part off of me? What's wrong with you, you freaks?
This must be a Christian nation.
Yeah. But so going with that idea of what I think Jenna is doing, despite knowing nothing about this route beyond what we've seen, or Jenna's route, is that because she understands that, like, you really have to be uncomfortable to grow. And she understands that pretty much everything in Carl's life is designed to make him comfortable in a lot of ways. And that the things that make him uncomfortable, he's just resigned to them permanently existing. His house is haunted. Okay. Have they brought in a preacher of like every possible faith? These guys are like millionaires. Like, if you are a multimillionaire who owns $1 billion company, trust me, you can get a Wiccan priestess. You can get a Catholic priest. You get a priest of every single Christian denomination. The Mormons will show up and they'll be really happy, and they'll do stuff. You can get like a rabbi to show up. You can get a Muslim guy to show up. Like, you can get everything to show up and sanctify your house. Like a million.
This sounds like one of those jokes where it's like a rabbi, a preacher, and someone else walk into a bar.
Yeah, except
when this time it's a mansion.
Yeah, and like it's not even a joke. Like that's the part that's great about it. It's like these guys have enough money to just walk in here and just be like, okay, cool, just sanctify the entire place so the haunting goes away. And they're like, all right, no problem. And like this, this guy and his wife show up. And they're like, yeah, we have this doll that's behind like holy glass at our home. We're experts at this. It's like, oh, it's this pocket watch. It's possessed. All of them are just kind of splashing around holy water. The next thing you know, Carl's turning blue. yeah. It's all silver. Turns out Carl's just going around licking it all off the walls.
It tastes good. Tastes like silver and gold, minus the gold.
But there are things that they could be doing to try and deal with these problems. Putting permanent cameras down there so they can see what's going on. Looking for any entrances where people could potentially get into their house. All kinds of things. And, he's sort of resigned that these things exist. So his world is designed... his world is designed to make him comfortable, and then all the things that are making him uncomfortable, he's just kind of resigned that they exist, and that's how things are. That's how the world be. And Jenna's sitting here going, no, that's not how the world be. Figure it out.
Your bubble is going to burst eventually, and you're not going to be prepared for it. Yeah. I mean, his bubble already did burst when he got into that, when he broke up, then his bubble kind of burst.
Yeah.
And then he formed it again, albeit it was full of like marijuana smoke at that point. Mm-hmm. But then his bubble burst again when he wrecked his car.
Yeah.
And, put his head through his windshield because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Because he probably had a decent amount of self-hatred, self-hatred...
he did actually say, like, why does it matter? So he already, I'm pretty sure you're right. He had a certain level of hatred against himself, so he didn't even care about driving safe anymore. He was just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, if I die, I die. Who cares? And
who cares?
There is something that comes from that. So usually when people have a lot of self-loathing and a lot of self-hatred, one, it is based around the idea of trauma, like that bubble that sort of set them, like that thing that has, basically put a lock on their life, on their growth. So that shame that comes from that generally manifests itself as self-loathing and sometimes aggression towards other people. But think about self-loathing and self-hatred as your anger at a situation being directed inward. You'll always notice that people who are super angry and express that anger aren't depressed. It's weird. Like, they'll be really angry and then they'll be just fine and they'll be happy. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with this person? Literally, they aren't directing that at themselves. They're directing it at the sources of their anger, at the causes of their anger. And as a result of that, they burn it off. And they don't feel it anymore. The emotion's gone. They don't have to hold it down. So people who have a lot of self-hatred, they have that anger at things that happen. Like, okay, he had this bad experience with this woman with this girl that he dated because they were in high school at the time. Hopefully he didn't date a woman when he was in high school. And be like that one teacher in, like, what was it, Florida or something? And that one lady teacher.
Florida woman.
And so, like, he's still obviously upset about that and angry. And sure, he does, like, reach out every now and again to, like, Chase and other characters, mostly Chase in this setting, to try and, like, because Chase is a trusted person. So he's trying to reach out that tendril to see, you know, is this someone that I can latch on to and maybe open this bubble up a little bit, maybe extend this trauma just a little bit to where I can get some validation, where I can maybe heal a little bit, just a little bit. And so,
a little bit.
you know, that's kind of what's trying to happen there. And I mean, that's one of the organic ways that people deal with this kind of stuff. They'll sort of push the boundaries of this bubble a little bit here and there to encompass other things. But unless they learn how to get rid of that bubble, unless they learn how to get rid of that lock, that chastity cage on growth, they're just going to be stuck. This isn't hopeless, by the way. I want to make that very clear. You can move forward. You can get through this. You can get rid of that lock if you want to. But it takes work, and it takes dealing with that emotion that you're running away from. And people tend to run away as fast and far as they possibly can because, oh my God, it's so scary. I've let it build up for a decade. The thing, it's just this, I look into the abyss and it's all encompassing. But when it just happened originally 10 years ago, it was like I looked into it and it was this little, like, puddle of just rot and pus. And now it's ballooned into this, I look at it and it fills my view. Then you start dealing with it and you realize, oh, I mean, it's kind of, when I scrape out the infection, like huge portions of this all-encompassing void of despair just sort of goes away. It's like, well, bullshit, this is easy. I mean, it's not easy, it sucks, but I mean, I'm scraping away at this infection and it's going away a lot. It's almost like if you cure the source of the infection, the indicators of the infection tend to go away too. You don't have to go and scrape away every single one of them. If we give the trauma equivalent of antibiotics to someone with Y. pestis, the bubonic plague, it's almost like the boils go away. Wow. So, with Jenna, I think she's trying to burst Carl's bubble. And how she learned how to do that was basically to have the crap kicked out of her. And to basically take her, to have like her coping mechanisms kind of thrown in her face. So I think that's what she's trying to do to Carl. Like, hey, sure, you know that this party was for Leo. Good job.
Well, I should also jump in right here and just say, if you're curious about this, one thing that I just did on my channel is do a short story. Echo's got a lot of short stories, and one of them, Runaway, is actually about Jenna and her backstory. And I think that lays out pretty well why, now that and Route 65, they together they help give a good backstory about why she might be being so hard on Carl. Plus what she said in this route already, in Carl's route, is basically you can't just, she said in this route, you can't just stay up here in your room, nothing's ever going to change, kind of stuff like that. She's trying to be really real about it. Like, you could hide for as much as you want, but eventually you won't be able to hide anymore.
Yep.
If you go back to the story, I don't know if I want to ruin it.
Yeah, don't ruin it, but.
But yeah, it shows that she took action and that solved her problems, and that actively led her from where you saw her in Route 65, which is living with her parents in an abusive household. Spoiler alert, I guess. And so she had a bad situation. She acted to get out of it, and she's currently living a much better life. And probably her life is better than, let's see, anyone else's. Like, we could compare her to, say, Flynn, who's, if you don't know, he's got a job at City Hall. He's like one of the clerks there. So, and with his aunt.
Elected official.
Elected official. So he's doing pretty well. Leo, he's living on his own. His parents let him come along, and he's doing pretty good. You have Carl, who's like, living with his parents and basically on his own. Doesn't have a damn thing to worry about. TJ living on his own. So she's like the one, I think she's like the one who's totally independent of her parents. Other than Chase, maybe. And Flynn. I don't think Flynn doesn't live with his parents. He doesn't live with his aunt either, I don't think. He might, but I'm not sure. But I think he's independent. And then Jen is definitely independent. I think she's like the most adult, most independent one of the entire group.
Probably.
So she certainly acts like it. She's definitely the most mature. She's like got control of herself pretty well. But the point is, like, she took active steps to get to where she's at, and she's enjoying like a high life. She knows how miserable she is, and her whole focus is, Carl, you're depressed, sure, but all you do is get high every single day and do nothing. And you're miserable, and you stay miserable, and you got this pattern of being miserable, getting high, staying miserable, getting high, staying miserable, onward and so forth and so forth. And she's saying, take some action. Just take a fucking action and you can improve your life. I did it. Why can't you? Yeah. And Carl's excuse is, well, it's myself. And she's like, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Like, and I mean, like, the biggest enemy you will have to actually improving your life is usually yourself.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So
lack of motivation. That's why I was kind of saying earlier, if you want to bulk up, throw a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just find a motivation outside yourself, because that's going to help you struggle through whatever it is.
Yeah, like if we go with the weightlifting analogy, like literally how you make muscles bigger is you damage them. That is the mechanic that makes your muscles bigger. So if you ever want to bulk up, literally what you need to do is get a weight that you can lift like 1 to 3 times and lift that, and you will basically feel your muscle tearing.
I don't know if you'll feel your muscle tearing, but you will feel actual discomfort.
That like, discomfort I
should say, because I have a perfect example of this. I've done squats, and I did some working out. I've lifted some weights, not with the purpose of just bulking up or anything, just getting healthier. But within like the last year, I did my first like split squat or Bulgarian squat. And literally the first one I did on each leg, I could feel the discomfort set in on the muscle. I was like, it wasn't like, ow, shit, I tore my muscle. It was just like, I was like, oh, I know I'm going to have growth because I'm that fucking heavy. And that muscle is that undeveloped. So I did literally one split squat, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have growth. That's going to be sore. And I did exactly one. I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't do any more, but it says do 5.
Literally, that discomfort is the muscle tearing.
That is the muscle tearing. Yeah.
That is muscle fibers literally ripping. And so your body's going to have to put them back together, and it's going to make them thicker and stronger so that when that happens again, they don't rip, because you're like, that's literally how your body grows. And so that analogy works. Like, that discomfort makes you stronger.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you can endure.
And there is something that's really important. So let's talk about the addiction pipeline a little bit, and then we'll talk about depression. So like what Carl is in right now is, you see it constantly with addicts or anybody who uses drugs, which is you use the drug and then you become depressed. And then you use the drug to cure the depression. And then you're depressed. Repeat until you die from the drug. Or you get away from it, basically. And so what can we do to avoid that? Well, the research shows that if someone's depressed, the easiest way to get them to not be depressed is to get them doing something, usually outside, usually exercising or moving around or something like that. So literally, the cure for depression, as long as it's not just a chemical imbalance in your brain that you need medication for, it might just be you go to an amusement park. Or you go for a jog on a park, or like you go for a hike. And so the important thing here is there's a lot, depression and sadness sort of increases the amount of energy required to actually start getting the motion in progress, I guess, to get the body in motion. But once you get in motion, once you get doing something, you tend to feel better. And so you start feeling less depressed. It won't cure the depression entirely, but if you feel really depressed right now and you decide to go out for a jog every single day, spend a lot of time in nature, spend a lot of time going on walks, I can almost guarantee you that a week from now of going on daily walks and just being present, not listening to music, not putting on stuff to help you escape, but just being present when you're walking or jogging or going to an event and actually trying to participate, which will be difficult because if you're depressed, you don't want to participate, but go for that walk, go for that jog, be in nature. A week later, you will most likely feel better than you did at the beginning of the week when you were just sitting at home doing nothing. So that's just one of those things. It is, there's a lot of energy needed to get you going when you are depressed. So if we look at Jenna trying to deal with Carl, what I think she's trying to do is put energy into that system so that Carl will actually do something. Because right now, Carl does nothing. He just laments the fact that he's sad. The fact that his life isn't going anywhere. And it's like, that's nice and everything. And there is an amount of time that that's acceptable to just lament. Okay, cool. You've lamented. Your life isn't going anywhere. You need to do something about that. You can't just sit on your laurels. There's another thing that's really important here, which is, okay, so this party, that was Leo's birthday party, basically. Okay, cool. So they threw this party. It was an excuse to get everyone together and have fun, right? Okay, sure. Carl knows it's not for him. But you know what? They're throwing the party anyway. Why not enjoy yourself? Why not try to get something out of it? Right? Like, why not just hang out with your friends? Sure, the party isn't for you specifically. It's an excuse. Like, we're using your birthday as an excuse. Sure, it's next month, but, early birthday. Why not? Get everyone together. It's not like everyone's just going to drive back a month later and be here for your birthday. Why not? You're with friends. It's an excuse. It's like drinking. Back in the old days, why are there so many holidays with Vikings? Because it's just an excuse to get flat out drunk. It's an excuse to get blasted. So, okay, so Carl's sitting here and he could have taken advantage of this party that was being thrown. He could have participated. But again, he needs a whole lot of energy to really get going, unless it's something he's kind of interested in pursuing already, and he kind of just doesn't have the energy. And so he refuses to really participate. And then Jenna gets on his case about it. Again, she's trying to add that energy to the system to get him moving. And if you look at it, so Carl has interest in Chase. Okay, cool. So Chase by default is adding energy into the system, and it's actually because Carl wants to pursue this, because Carl wants to do stuff with Chase, it's actually lowering the energy requirement to where Chase can get him going. So, kind of is what it is. But there's that saying that sometimes you just need a swift kick in the ass to get you going. That's what Jen is trying to do. And she understands that that's kind of what you need sometimes. Hers was her horrific household. Is like getting a swift kick in the ass every single day, sometimes hourly. And so she was extremely uncomfortable, always had that energy there. And so that was eventually able to force her towards movement. When we look at escapism, so escapism, she was manga, anime, Carl is drugs and video games, formerly comic books. So escapism in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's when it's excessive that it's a bad thing. When you're overly relying on it.
Yeah, I think to jump in real quick, I think one of the major identifiers of maladaptive behavior or just like a mental illness of some sort, or, let's slap that on there, is when it affects normal daily functioning. When it affects your functioning, then it becomes a disorder. Like if Jenna had, a better home life and she still had some escapism, but she was able to go out and live a proper life and, and do that and, have like a regular, average childhood instead of an abusive one, that wouldn't really be maladaptive. That would still be, you're good. You have a little escapism, but you're managing everything to the point where it's not affecting your life. Carl, with his gaming and drugs, if he did marijuana and he played video games, but he had a job, he wore a seatbelt and practiced safe driving and safe life and safe living, and he did, he was able to go out and just be a functioning adult, like all the time, then it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem that he does drugs and plays video games. That would actually be just fine because it's not affecting his life and his daily, ability to function. The fact that it is maladaptive, that it is affecting his daily life, it is affecting his ability to go out and live a normal, healthy life, that's what makes it maladaptive. Because his gaming is being used as a coping mechanism. His marijuana is definitely being used as a coping mechanism. I think it's the primary coping mechanism. And because he's not doing anything else to solve the problems, he's just covering up the symptoms by the drug use, that is what makes it an actual problem. That is what makes it maladaptive, and that is what makes it an actual problem.
And let's not forget his porn addiction as well. He brought that up at the beginning. It's not really focused on, but he's just like, he cybers constantly with AI. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And the thing is, it kind of can give him whatever he wants. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have to interact with reality. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all illusions. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things. And let's give an example of like what is maladaptive gaming, because a lot of people play video games like we play video games. We're playing a video game right now. And and so like the question becomes, when does something become maladaptive? Like,
That's a very good question.
and like this isn't an hour thing, by the way. Like, you'll have news media outlets focus on like, oh, someone plays video games 8 hours a day. Oh. What if that's their job? Is
Yeah,
that maladapted
streamers.
now?
Yeah, streamers. There's a lot of streamers who do like, well, let's just say there's a lot of streamers who play video games all day long. That's their job, and then they go out and they can live a normal life if they have like so many hours on. It's like if you're gonna say a streamer has maladaptive behavior for working like 10 hours a day and then going home living like a normal life, not going home because they're already home, but coming out of their recording area and living a normal life, you could also say, because we can use this nice little logical trick here, which I don't know the name of, you could also say that the person who works 10-hour days at their salary job is also maladaptive. And if you can't say that, then you can't say that the streamer is maladaptive.
Yeah, it's called
but
work addiction, right? Or work.
No, not even that. If they have just a 10-hour job, or if they work 10 hours a day on their salary because they have to actually get that work done, that's fine. That's just like a normal day. It could be that they work 4 10-hour days, and that's like their 40-hour work week, and that's fine.
Yeah,
but
I see the analogy you're drawing, yeah.
Yeah. But let's say someone has the maladaptive of being online streaming constantly, and they never get out, and they're literally just trapped in their house with like agoraphobia. But then you could also draw the same parallel to, in this case, what that's maladaptive. You can look at maladaptive as the person who works like 15, 16 hours a day, hardly ever sees their family, barely has like a social life. And that's maladaptive. That is actual work addiction right there. And they're using work to avoid whatever got them upset, whatever their trauma is, whatever issues they really need to deal with. They're using work to avoid dealing with it.
Yeah,
so
sometimes.
In that case, work becomes maladaptive. In the other case, streaming kind of becomes work, and that's maladaptive.
So what we can conclude here is that the number of hours that someone spends doing something is kind of a bad metric
it doesn't matter.
Like see if something's maladaptive or not. Instead, it's, are they doing this thing to avoid other things that they should be doing? That tends to be the important part. So when we look at that, it is, should someone, let's say that someone does not have a sense of fulfillment in their life. Can you push your mic a little ways away from your face, by the way?
Am I breathing?
Yes. We can hear you.
How's that?
And so if people are, let's go with the idea of people who are trying to get achievement. So achievements in video games has actually given people a metric by which to prove how good they are as a gamer. And so it's giving them something to chase. And in a sense, that's an okay thing. The problem comes in with people who need to 100% every game, because some of those 100% are really difficult to do. Let's take Terra Invicta, because I found that recently. A game of Terra Invicta is going to take like 80 hours. And to get every achievement, you probably need to beat the game with every single faction. There's like 7 of them. And let's say you're someone who, and there's different ways you could play it where maybe that unlocks different achievements. I don't even know if the game has achievements. Let me look real quick. If I still have it installed, because I realized kind of what it was. Yeah, it has achievements. So it has like 80 to 100 of them. So let's say you really wanted to go and chase down all of those achievements. Well, that's probably going to take you 300, 400, 500 hours, maybe more. Okay, cool. Are you going to do that over the course of like a year or two? I mean, that's probably a healthy way to do it. If it's maladaptive, however, and the maladaption is you're getting a sense of personal achievement by getting all of those in-game achievements, that's where the maladaptive is. Because instead of focusing on your own life, instead of focusing on taking college classes, and instead of focusing on moving your career forward or your relationships forward, anything that improves you as an actual person and gives you that sense of achievement, you're instead focused on this video game where these achievements are purposely going. I mean, some of them are going to be just as you go. It's like, you completed chapter 1, woo, achievement! But other ones will be like, I don't know, you're playing Dead Space 2, and it's like, you took 0 damage throughout the entire run. Fantastic. Congratulations. Achievement. It's like, yeah, borderline impossible, if not actually impossible. But
I'm sure it's possible, because if some people can actually go through no hit, no damage runs of Elden Ring, I'm sure you're able to do it in Dead Space. If you can do that in any of the Blood, Souls-like games, you can do it in any game.
Yeah, maybe. So, like, the whole thing is, if it's someone's not focusing on improving their actual life, they're just adopting these achievements in game, and that's what they are now focusing on as like their personal achievements. That's when it becomes maladaptive, because they could play the game like, I don't know, 2-3 hours a night, and that's where their recreation is. That's their free time that they're spending it on. Okay, cool. Have at it. Like, you want to do, let's say you're playing Helldivers 2. Okay, well, if you do a set of 3 missions, congratulations, each mission can go to like 40 minutes. So you have just spent 120 minutes, so about 2 hours max, playing through those 3 missions. Okay, cool. Maybe it doesn't take that long, but maybe it does. You don't know. What if... Anyway, so 3 hours isn't that big of a deal in that case. 3-4 hours isn't that big of a deal. But if it's every day, and they're doing that in lieu of other things, they're not going and getting into relationships, they're not making friends with people, they're not hanging out with people that they like, they're just sort of using this as the replacement for all of that, that's when it becomes maladaptive. That's when they start having problems. But in this case, let's take Terra Invicta. You want to get all these achievements? That's going to take you like 500 hours? Cool. So on your days off, you play Terra Invicta for 16 hours a day, so you can rush out all these achievements. Okay, now we got a problem. Because, like, you wake up, you brush your teeth, take a shower, shit, shower, shave, as they say, and then you eat breakfast. Well, you make breakfast, and then you come home, then you come up to your desk, and you turn on Terra Invicta, and you start eating while playing Terra Invicta. And now you're checking emails while playing Terra Invicta. And you're doing everything else while playing Terra Invicta. That's where it starts to become a problem. Because you're rushing out these things that are ultimately meaningless. Ultimately, everything is meaningless unless you're in some way building up the future for other people. Like the pursuit of knowledge, doing research, is ultimately not meaningless because that is helping other people build up that knowledge. That's helping us, essentially get to where Terra Invicta is, getting to the stars, colonizing the solar system, then eventually colonizing other star systems. But like, you're taking a super long view for that. So that's when things aren't meaningless. Helping other people isn't meaningless. Or is it? You decide. But ultimately, most things are meaningless. But achievements in a video game is especially meaningless. Especially. It's just a dowsing rod to say, hey, it's just like an arbitrary line in the sand that says, oh, you did this? Cool. Achievement. Awesome. You did this thing that's hard to do. Cool. Achievement. You could take the same amount of effort, 500 hours, and you could, I don't know, like so most classes are, 3 hours a week? Most college classes? 3-4 hours a week?
Yeah, I think, well, it really depends on how frequently you have them. If it's like, if it's an everyday class, usually it's about an hour. It's like 50 minutes. If it's every couple, if it's like 2 days a week, then it's probably like 2-3 hours. Three times a week, it's probably an hour and a half, couple hours.
We'll say it's
so
5 hours
depends.
a week.
But for the most part, you're kind of looking around 5-6 hours a week being in a classroom.
Okay, so we'll say every class that you could take at college is 5 hours a week. There's also study time on top of that, so...
There's homework. Yeah, you really want to get that in.
You usually don't need to spend twice the amount of time, but we'll just be super nice and say that you're being a hyper studious student and like studying and basically spending 10 hours on every class that you're taking. Just say that. Okay,
professional
so
student.
We have 500 hours to get all these achievements in Terra Invicta, just as like a random number. Okay, if we divide that by 10, that's 50 weeks of classes. So let's say you're taking a full load. You're taking 4 classes. Cool. To get all of those achievements is the effective equivalent of taking 12.5 weeks worth of 4 classes. That's almost an entire semester. That's a quarter probably requires more time, but you get the idea. And this is going with the high end of you're studying your ass off and like you're going through and reviewing the chapter. This is you being an A student. Okay? This is you're getting straight A's without really trying because you're kind of learning the subject so well and the course material so well that you're not struggling at all. So that's an entire semester. So like you do that 4 times, congratulations, you have an associate's degree. You do that 8 times, you have a bachelor's degree. You do that 4 more times after that, you have a master's degree. Suddenly you're probably able to make like 75, 100K, 150, 200K. So if you allow the maladaptive stuff to run your life and you use that to focus entirely on the maladaptive stuff, there's a cost. You're giving something up for that. It's just, these are achievements that you can see right now and you can work towards them, and they're easier to achieve than what you perceived something else to be, and they're safer to achieve. Because if you fail, so what? You just have to put in a little bit more time. Here's the secret though. In real life, if you fail and it specifically does not kill you, it doesn't matter then. You can just try again. Oh no, you failed the class. Woo! Guess what? You can probably take the class next semester or over the summer. Or you can do a really compressed version of it over a mini semester, a mini session over like winter break or something. Did you guys know that summer session is actually like 3 different mini sessions? So you have the long summer that fills up the entire thing, but then you have like usually 2 to 3 mini summer sessions that are full classes. They're just compressed over this very short period of time. So literally you can take a bunch of classes over summer if you failed them. So it's like, oh no, I failed at this thing. Woo! Try it again. Oh no, I failed again.
And since you've already taken it, you can pretty much not copy the answers, but you're gonna be more familiar with the materials. So you can kind of speed run most of it, and then just get to the areas where you really struggled. Focus a little more on that, and hopefully you're overcome some of those difficult areas.
If we go back to and like there's a lot of realizing that that's how things are. Like there's a lot of perspective for that. And the thing that sucks about it is take Terra Invicta, well, you can probably get those achievements in like, I don't know, 50 hours or something. Not really that bad. You probably get some of them at least. And you get that little bit of dopamine that's like, yeah, I did it. Woo. Okay. Yeah, there's more time in between, woo, I did it, and when you started, an associate's takes like 2 years. So there's a longer delay, but it's really important to put things in perspective for yourself. Be like, if you can just be like, okay, this little thing is an achievement in and of itself. Getting a high score on the midterm. Hell, getting a high score on this chapter's exam test. That's an achievement in and of itself. You got to split it up to where there's these little achievements that you're doing that you're rewarding yourself for, that you're celebrating succeeding at. And then there's the slightly bigger achievements like a midterm. And if you're able to really space those out, well, I mean, you're kind of doing the same thing with your classes that you'd normally be doing in Terra Invicta or whatever game you're playing. So the only difference is instead of somebody saying, oh, you did it, good job, you're instead looking at this and saying, I got a 95% on that test. Hell yeah, good job. I did that. I made that happen. You have to set your own achievements. Also, understanding to ask for help. There's one thing that I noticed in this that Carl never actually does with Jenna, at least not that I've seen so far. So Jenna comes in and she's giving him shit for, isolating and doing all these things that she knows are bad for him. At no point does Carl just be like, you know what? Fine. What do you think I should do, Jenna? Tell me what you think I should do. He never takes the ball and firmly puts it in her court and says, tell me what to do. You want me to indulge you? You want me to kiss your ass? Fine. Fine. You know what? Why not? Let's see how it goes. What do you want me to do? He does not do that at any point. He probably does also, I don't know if he knows how bad she's had it. He might, but I don't think he necessarily does.
Now, from what I understand, with the prequel, Route 65, he heard about it, but he was kind of disconnected. Like, the entire friend group kind of had an idea of how bad she had it, but it was more Leo and Flynn that were more involved.
Yeah.
And actually going over there and dealing with the family. So Flynn and Leo are much more empathetic in that way. They understand more.
Yeah.
I don't know, empathy, maybe sympathy, but yeah, they're much more involved. They would have a better idea. I think Carl is just kind of like he heard about it, and it's one of those things where you hear like, oh wow, that happened, and then like something else happens in your life and it's pretty much gone. You don't think about it anymore.
Yeah.
because you never had to really deal with it and see it.
Yeah. Like, let's go with an example that is probably more obvious for people. Let's say you're learning how to do mountain climbing. Cool. Let's say the guy who's training you is a complete asshole about everything. And you're sitting there like, man, what is this guy's freaking problem? Okay, I didn't hammer the pits in as far as I'm usually supposed to. Look, it worked. It was good enough. And then he tells you about the guy, his best friend, no less, who got his pitting in good enough, his python, his pitton, good enough, and then climbed, and then the pitton came out, and he fell to his death. He doesn't want to see that happen again. So get your shit together. Do it how you're supposed to do it, or don't do it at all. There's this thing where people who have really been through shit, they will be pretty chill about a lot of things. But there are certain things, I mean, some of it's associated with their own trauma, but let's say they've moved on and grown from that. They know the consequences of not doing these things. They see the danger. And so when you're not doing what they know you need to do, they will tell you, hey, like let's say you have like Marines who are going out into combat. I can guarantee you that the E1s are getting shit from everyone who's seen more combat than them. Is your gun clean? Are your mags loaded? Is everything correct? Is everything squared away? Have you made absolutely certain everything's there? There was this Special Forces Army guy that I used to watch, and he would always talk about how people just coming into the war zone they were in, they'd be like, yeah, I'm going to get like light armor, and I'm going to get like a half helmet or something so I can be mobile. And then after like 6 months there, after they've been through it, they're just like, no, I want as heavy of armor as you can possibly give me. Because now they know what it's like. Now they see the problem. And so now they probably watch people die, and they don't want to see that again. And now they're the ones giving shit to the new people coming in, being like, no, you're not wearing a half helmet. No, you're not wearing light armor. You're putting on the heaviest fucking shit you can so that you don't die. Because I don't want to see that, and I don't want to have to, like, carry you home. Wounded, sure, carry you home all the time. Dead person, don't want to do that. Even if they don't like you. So the analogy there is Jenna's been through some shit. She knows what's going on. She knows she has to act. She knows she has to do things. And so she's trying to force Carl to do that. But at no point does Carl be like, okay, fine, what do you think I should do? We'll do it together. How's that? At no point is he putting the ball in her court and saying, fine. He's just sort of hiding behind his walls and saying, nope, screw you. And that's not a dialogue anymore. She's trying to get through that wall, and he's not letting her in. Because, it is possible that whatever solution she tries to give him does not work and just fails spectacularly. You know what? At that point, do you think she's still going to be giving him shit? Probably not. Because what she saw as his big solution to fix his life failed spectacularly and just made things worse, or didn't do anything. Made things worse, but hey, you tried, or even worse, had zero effect. That's the worst part. That's the worst feeling. It's bad when what you try to do actually makes things a little worse. But hey, you tried something. It didn't really work out. It didn't work out in a big way. But you tried something. So now we can sort of learn from that and try to find something else that might work in a better way. But it's when it has zero effect. That is the worst. Zero impact. Because then it's like, wow. We don't even know how to correct.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it is what it
I
is.
was kind of, I was kind of thinking like, if it makes things worse, isn't that the worst it can get? And you're like, no, it just says we don't know how to begin to resolve it, so it has zero effect. It's like, oh yeah, I guess that would be. And
Yeah.
you heap on confusion and frustration.
Yeah. If it makes it
Yeah,
worse, cool. We understand something now. We
we
understand a
understand the
little bit of the
relationship.
puzzle.
Yeah, we have some. I guess so. Yeah, you kind of understand some of the relationship here between actions and the consequences and the problem that we're facing.
Yeah.
Or if you have zero impact, it's just like we have absolutely no idea.
Yeah. We don't know now. Like, yeah. It's as I said, failure leads to success. After you fail at something enough times, you will eventually figure out what does not work and you'll start doing what does. Sometimes you figuring out what does work is just process of elimination. There was this
Or it's like you just try a bunch of things and each one has zero effect until you find one thing that has some effect, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is the path we should be on.
yeah, and like sometimes, especially with therapy, like when things go horribly wrong, it's like, cool, I know not to do that again. But it also raises other questions like, why didn't that work? Which usually points at other things. So, an example of that is like if you look at trauma, it can build upon itself. So, like, someone will get traumatized at like 5 or 6 years old, and then that will lock them. And then they'll get traumatized again at like 8, and then 10, and 12. And you have this trauma that's all building on itself and making things just worse and worse and worse. And so you'll be looking at the trauma that they suffered at like 18, and you'll be trying to solve that. But then something goes horribly wrong. And you're like, what is going on? This should have done something. And then you realize there's trauma buried further beneath that. And so this is when you start really taking those notes to try and figure out, what's actually going on here. And you start digging down and you start finding more and more and more trauma until you get to the deepest part of the pit. And it's like, cool, awesome. I know now what that is. And you keep trying to dig and you don't find anything else. It's like, cool. So we need to start looking at all of this and saying, cool, what do we do that helps us start resolving this stuff little by little without triggering any of it? And then you figure out something to do. But you're never going to figure out those deeper pieces of trauma or those linked pieces of trauma until you run afoul of them, in many cases. Until you run into that problem. Then you can start understanding that they exist. So, yeah, you won't know until you fail. Like, as much as Elon has made the horrific decision to make himself a political figure, and we'll just leave it at that. He is right about one thing, which is you only learn by failing. Like when one of his rockets explodes, he's like, fantastic, we now know that something went wrong. Let's look at all the data and figure out what happened. Okay, cool. So if enough of his rockets explode, eventually they'll stop exploding. Which means they're safe enough to put people in. Potentially hundreds, if not thousands of people at some point as the rockets get bigger and bigger, and then send them off to a different planet or the moon or something. It's like,
Well, that's also how he ended up being able to land them. Like enough of them fell over that he figured out how to get them to stay upright and actually land.
mm-hmm. And here's the important thing about that. Like, we've been, like, I believe it was the US, we had self-landing rockets. They would go up, they'd detach from the actual space vehicle, and then I think it was like the 70s or the 80s, we did successfully land a few of these rockets on a platform so we could reuse them. It's just it was so incredibly difficult to do it and unreliable back then that it wasn't something that we really worried about too much. We could do it, but the rate of success was fairly low, is my understanding. And then Elon showed up and he started doing this thing on a regular basis, and it's like, cool, the technology has gotten there. If you guys look at to give you guys an example, the rockets that were used in like the Apollo missions, those were essentially handcrafted in a lot of ways, like hand machined to fit. So we recreated those engines, and they're like half or a quarter the size with modern machining techniques, and give the same, if not more, thrust. So this is to say, yes, we can do something, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, but we could do it back then, but now we can do it way more effectively just because of technology progressing. But, the original point is that the more you fail, the more you learn how to do things. The more you learn where your blind spots are. But I think that's everything.
I think that is everything that we could really talk about with this.
Can you imagine
episode.
Carl just letting like Jenna put a leash around his neck and be like, "We're gonna go do all this now, and you're gonna be happy at the end of it"? And he's like, "Oh, fine."
No, I really can't.
I can't either. It'd be funny, but like I can't.
Well,
imagine...
there is one thing I think we can bring up again, which is something that one of our mutual friends or associates at this point brought up, which is the idea that they have gone through therapy and it didn't work. So that could create. Now you said, like we're talking about, you try something and it has no effect at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, well, that's kind of the worst thing that could happen because we don't know how to fix it. And it's kind of simple, just say, well, let's just try something else. But then if we apply that to Carl's case, like he's going to have to go through therapy.
Yes.
That's one thing that we're pretty aware of. Let's say he goes to therapy. I think it actually said he did go to therapy at some point, and he said it didn't really help. So it's, well, there's not just, oh, okay, we tried something, let's just try something else, like applying a different like equation to a math problem. There's a whole lot of like, am I able to be fixed? Is there a solution? Am I helpless? Am I hopeless? Just a whole lot of emotional stuff attached to if this therapy didn't work. And also, in Carl's case, money's not an option. Money's not an issue, but a lot of people, money is an issue. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, this method didn't work. Am I able to get a solution that will work, or will all solutions fail and I'm just hopeless? And thus I'm helpless against this issue I have. And then also, kind of in that same vein, if money's an issue and given there is a solution, am I able to find that solution before my money runs out? And then what kind of like maintenance do we need to have? And spoiler, if you go to therapy, you might not have to go through therapy forever, but it's kind of generally good to just go get kind of checkups. It's like your mental health needs, or is recommended to have some mental health checkups just regularly, the same as you go to a doctor or a dentist for your dental or your physical health checkups. Just it's recommended. It's just not emphasized here in the U.S. a lot.
Yeah,
but they actually actively disencourage to go get mental health because only wussies do that, or some stupid bullshit like that from some jughead.
Wait, only wusses go and get mental health? Well, shit, I'm the biggest wuss on the planet.
Well, fuck me then.
Well, yeah,
fuck me.
That's why I'm so happy.
But no, it's kind of like that. a lot of people, luckily, a lot of people, even American like YouTubers and such, they're actively saying, yeah, I go out, I do therapy once a week. I think one of the best examples of it's okay for you to do therapy is Chris Rock. Yeah, he kind of looks like the kind of the guy, I'll take care of it. I'm good. I grew up in the hood and all that. But he said after a certain point, after all his fame, he decided he really wanted to figure his shit out. And he started getting like hours and hours and hours and hours of therapy every single week. So if Chris Rock can do that, and he grew up in the hood and he's kind of a gangster, in a way, there's no fucking reason you can't. So if anyone says like fucking Chris Rock did it, he's probably still going to therapy. He's probably still doing like 10 plus hours of therapy a week because he just wants to figure his shit out. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong with you. It just means you could be doing better. And so it's like having a coach. If you have a coach who's helping you get better at your sports or keeping your motivation up to work out and bulk up, it doesn't mean you can't do it on your own. It's just easier to have someone there with you. And a lot of times it's actually more it's literally because it's beneficial to have someone there with you. Because, sometimes it's hard to progress. Sometimes you get demotivated. And sometimes you need someone to just be that ally that you have to say, go ahead and do it. It's fine. Yeah. Do it. It happens. Just keep going. Do another rep. Do another rep. Do another rep.
Just do it.
Just do it. There's 1,000 and beyond the screen all saying, just do it. But no, it's kind of like that. Like if someone's saying go get therapy, they're not saying you're fucked and you're flawed or anything. It could literally just be you could be doing better, or it could be you have some kind of trauma you need to get past. Either way, it's fine.
In America, there's such a negative stigma around mental health that some people will literally say, you need a therapist. You need to go to therapy because they're literally just
and that's
an
insult.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be.
Yeah. There's something wrong with you. Like those are the people you cut out of your life. And you're like, oh, okay. But
yeah, those are the kind of people you just turn to and say, geez, it's been a while since you had sex, right?
It's been a while since you got laid, huh?
Yeah. You need to put down your blow-up doll and go get a real girl. Social interaction would help. Hopefully no one else is going like, oh, that hurts.
And it's like, oh, sorry. Man, lady, your boyfriend, he takes double A's, right? And yeah, all kinds of awful people out there. So like, what we're talking about here is the people who will tell you to get therapy because they actually want to help you. Don't mistake that for the jerks who are trying to suggest that you have bad mental health to insult and attack you. My personal advice with those people is to set a boundary with them. And the thing about boundaries is that when people violate them, you have complete right to throw them right back over that boundary. Because people who are mean, who are abusive, who are jerks, they will violate your boundaries and then they'll see what you do. And so if they violate your boundary and you don't do anything, you cave in a little bit, well, they know they just pushed that boundary in a little bit. And now they want to find out how far they can push that boundary before they get pushed back. If instead they violate that boundary and you immediately choke them by the neck, pick them up and body slam them on the other side of it, well, they understand that's probably not a good idea. And they're probably never going to talk to you again, and they'll avoid you like the plague because they know that when they do that thing that they really like doing, which is violating your boundaries, there will be consequences. And they don't like that. Now, this isn't to say that these people are 100% bad. Some of them a lot of people just... And I don't mean you actually choke them, pick them up, and body slam them. I don't mean you actually do that.
It's one of the things where you just kind of bitch slap them back into place, which is
the other side of the boundary. Yeah, and sometimes they don't know the boundaries there, and so that's a good time to be like, hey, no, this is not a conversation we're talking about. This is not something of my life that is in any way related to you. We're not talking about this. We're not discussing this. And so a lot of people will say, oh, Okay, well, I mean, I just want to help you, but all right. And they won't bring it up again. Or if they do, they're not doing it to violate the boundary per se. They're just trying to help. And they're just being a little misguided in trying to help you.
Yeah, and actually, since you brought that up, it kind of reminded me, again, kind of plucking myself, uh, the short story Runaway. Jenna does this really, really well with Chase, where she puts up a boundary, and Chase very gently kind of bumps the boundary she puts up right in like their interaction, and she's reinforcing it with, "It's none of your business." And he presses it like, "But I really want to help out." And she's like, "I really want to know what's going on." And she's like, "It's none of your business." And she just reinforces that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's all you really need. And that's kind of, maybe that's the one way you can actually recognize people who are just curious and want to help and they just don't know how, versus the people who are malicious and really push it because they want to push your boundary, or they're not, I don't know, shouldn't say they're not good people, but their intentions are not good for you.
Yeah, and
Like yeah.
when we're talking about that too, like there are personality disorders that just do not understand boundaries at all. And so they will violate those boundaries constantly. And when you push back, and when you push them back, if they have these personality disorders, their reaction isn't, I made a mistake. Their reaction is, you're being a mean person because you're reinforcing the boundary. And
you're being unreasonable because you have boundaries.
Yeah, and it is completely unreasonable. But again, we're talking about people with personality disorders. Like, the thing is, like when someone has a personality disorder, it's called that for a reason. That doesn't necessarily make them a bad person or anything. It's just, this is one of those things where like this person, because of this like personality disorder that they have, they do not understand boundaries because they don't have them. That's the problem. They don't have a boundary, at least that they have reached yet. So why do you? Like if someone, let's say I have some personality disorder, and my boundary is so far deep within me that I'll tell you my entire life story and all of my deepest, darkest secrets, the things I do in the middle of the night when I'm alone. But there's like this one thing that if you ask me about it, I go berserk. That's the boundary. But
berserk.
Yeah, like seriously, I attack you and I start trying to strangle you. And it's because like that one thing is where that boundary is. And it's just so tightly protected.
It's like, how dare you ask me about my relationship with my calculator?
Right? And it's like
just whatever's on the tabletop here.
Yeah. But I mean,
can't believe you asked me about my tape measure.
But it's like, these are the extremes, right? And so like this person doesn't have boundaries. They'll tell you in depth about all of their abusive relationships. In depth. Entirely. How they felt, everything. And you're sitting there wondering, what the hell? Like, I wouldn't talk about this with anyone except for maybe a therapist.
And they're talking to strangers.
This person's telling this to a complete stranger. What the hell is going on? So, that's one of those things that can show up. And it's not the person with the personality disorder's fault. They just, again, they don't understand boundaries. They like with the personality disorders I'm talking about, they just don't understand them because their boundaries are so far deep inside of them that yours don't make any sense at all.
And it could also be, I think, like you can correct me if I'm wrong. It could also be they do have common sense boundaries for themselves, but they just completely disregard anyone else's boundaries because they just don't care about other people's boundaries.
You just described narcissists and some psychopaths. So, well, antisocial personality disorder.
And
I
narcissistic
think
personality disorder.
So, like, yeah, you will have people who do that, and yeah, those people are kind of just gonna be what they are. Those are the more offensive oriented ones, I guess. I mean, keep in mind that like someone can have narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder, and with enough therapy, they can control that. No problem. Like they'll understand, and they understand that if they keep doing these things that are bad, there will be consequences. It's like one of the worst things that can happen to a human being is total ostracization. Ostracization. So it's like if you are regularly a psycho and you treat everyone terrible, eventually no one's going to talk to you or even deal with you. You could have your leg broken on the side of the road, bleeding all over the place, and they'll just drive right past you because you're just that awful. It's like, okay, cool. Well, if no one will help you or talk to you, that's death. It might take a while, but that's death. So people learn that, so I mean, with enough therapy, they can learn, I need to rein this stuff in. I might not have a problem doing horrible things to someone, but everyone else has a problem with me doing horrible things to that person, even if I'm convinced they deserve it. So there are rules I have to play by. And if they have antisocial personality disorder or they have narcissistic personality disorder, they might not understand why those rules exist. What do you mean? That guy did horrible things. That person did horrible things to that child, and then I shot him in the head. What's the problem? He's gone. He can't do it again. And it's like, well, sure, but we have rules. We have laws. We have ways of doing things that make it to where someone can't just decide that someone needs to die and then kill them. Right? We have rules about how things are done, and these rules keep us all safe. So don't do that. And now we have to also use those rules against you because you just shot some random guy in the head. I mean, sure, we all think he deserved it, and if he went to trial, he would have been convicted, and horrible things would have happened to him in prison. But
and depending on where he's at in the world, he probably would have been shot by someone, maybe 3 people.
Yeah.
None of which were you.
Yeah.
You just had to be patient and wait.
Yes.
But and he would have been shot legally.
But again,
he would have been shot legally.
Yeah.
It just happened in the United States.
Yeah. And the thing to keep in mind is it's not even the legality part of it. It's when there are rules that govern punishment, people feel safer. When a police officer cannot just walk up and be like, aha, I don't like you, and just like shoot you. Like when a police officer is restrained from doing that, we feel a little bit safer. There are a lot of people who do not feel that they have those protections from police. And there are a lot of police officers who feel that they are above having to deal with those protections, like all the time. And so, I'm glad that we are punishing those police officers that ignore those rules. I'm glad that we are punishing them and dealing with them. And, hopefully that will reduce the amount of unrest that we have, because like there were movements in the US at the very least that were built around certain populations feeling and kind of objectively being targeted by police who were ignoring the rules and harming and killing these people, these groups, which is not okay. Okay?
No,
it's not okay for the police to do that.
Actively bad.
Yeah, actively bad.
And incredibly bad.
Yeah. So, yeah, rules of conduct. It's kind of what it really helps.
Yeah.
So
I think we've tangented quite a bit, but I think that's a really good stopping point for our discussion.
Well, let's talk about therapy just for a hot second.
A little bit more.
A little bit more. One thing I want to get out. So
a little more.
So Carl said that therapy didn't work for him. Okay, well, there are a few things. One, therapists are not enchanters. We cannot just cast a spell, go into your head, and fix all your problems. Okay, a huge part of therapy is you fixing things. Is you fixing things with the direction and like you investigating yourself to an extent. Another huge thing is Medicaid, Medicare, and most insurance providers have at least 30 days of therapy per year. Now, you're only going to see your therapist once a week, generally. So that means you have 30 weeks. Most of the time, if there's going to be change, you can probably start to see it within 12 weeks. So within 12 sessions. So you have plenty of time and opportunities to deal with a lot of underlying issues. The other thing is this, your therapist is when you come in, your therapist is going to sort of try to figure out what the issue is just by talking to you on like session 1. And they're going to try and get an idea of what is going on. And after that, they're going to say, okay, well, here seems to be the 3 most successful modalities, ways of doing things, ways of treating this issue that I know of. And I want you to tell me which one you want to try first. This isn't as soon as I choose a DBT, I'm stuck with DBT forever. Like, it's not how this works. If it just doesn't really seem to be working for you, we can switch to CBT. We can switch to like talk therapy. We can switch to something else. Like, and the other thing is they're going to be able to, like, let's say you've used 28 of your 30 sessions. Okay, you know what that therapist is going to do? They're going to say, okay, so the first session is going to be spent trying to figure out what's going on. The second session, which they know is going to be your last session because they can talk to insurance, is going to be them saying, all right, here's what it is. After this session, it's going to go to fee for service, FFS. Also means something else. And and what this means is you're now going to be on the hook for like the $200 something for every session.
I think usually after it comes off of like the insurance, like they actually give like a pay cut because they know like usually the person on insurance, they might not be able to afford so they're actually reduce their prices just to keep you as a client, not so that they can continue getting income from you, but so they can continue working and hopefully find the solution if they haven't found it already, and they can keep progressing you towards a better outcome.
Yeah. And what will probably happen with that is they'll go from like weekly sessions to maybe monthly, or like bi-monthly, once every 2 months, something like that. Maybe once every 6 months or a year. But the thing is, they'll find out what you want to do, and then that will tell them what they're going to do. So if they think that you need to try DBT, cool.
Now, what is DBT?
Dialectical behavioral therapy. So if they think,
what does that mean?
It means that we're talking more about your emotions and how the subconscious and the conscious mind are different. Well, they're very similar, but your subconscious does not directly influence your conscious mind. Instead, your subconscious just is. And you can sort of separate yourself and just look at what your subconscious is doing and be like, oh, well, that's interesting. I saw this. Let's say someone had trauma with a bearded person, and so now whenever they see someone with a beard, they immediately get angry and they want to attack the person. Well, dialectical behavioral therapy would be like, okay, I saw this person with a beard and I got furious. I wanted to rip their beard off and shove it up their ass. Okay. All right, well, I'm just looking at me being angry about that, and I don't know why. I just know that this happens. Okay, I'm going to wait for the anger to pass. I'm going to let it express itself and pass and try to remove myself from the situation a little bit and manage that. And I'm going to start learning how to see that that's coming and sort of start trying to find out where the source is, like what happened. that cause this. They're not cognitively thinking about it. They're instead just sort of accepting that the emotions are as they are. Now, I will tell you all right now, I am not a master of DBT at all. I'm not a therapist. So I'm giving you like my extremely scuffed version of understanding what it is. So the therapist, they know this is your last session covered by insurance. They know you can't pay. They know you can't do FFS, fee for service, for future therapy sessions. What they are going to do is they are going to give you an outline of everything that you need to do. They're going to tell you a handbook that you should buy. It'll probably be like expensive, but buy it. And they will tell you, work through these steps. And if you can come in every 6 months, come in every 6 months. If it's once a year, come in once a year. If you need someone to help you with this, there are free to heavily reduced rate mental health services that I am aware of that I can like push you towards, and they can help you. Sure, they have a lot of unlicensed people. They're still working on their hours to get licensed, but they're better than nothing.
Stuff happening in back alleys with not so clean rags.
You know, tubs full of ice. It is what it is, and
when you know, you know.
And it's the whole thing of they can start pointing you towards this whole wealth of information and things that you can do and journaling things that you can do to move forward without the therapist there to help you. And they'll also probably set you up with something when it's like, this is a free service. You can call them in an emergency and it will cost you nothing.
Yeah. I want to point out, I want to take a quick tangent here. Maybe not even a tangent, but just point out, Finn is repeatedly saying, especially at this point, this is something that you can go do. You can do journaling. You can do journaling. This is a free service that you can call. It's not something you go in, like I think Carl mentioned, like the idea of just going to counseling, that's the effort. No, nah, bro.
No.
It's so much more. It's the therapist doesn't fix you. You fix you.
Yep.
It's kind of like depending on if you're into like athletics, it's depending on the coach to make you fit or better at your sport. No, the therapist just kind of, or the coach guides your training that you are doing so that you can improve. If you have if you're in the gym and you have a coach and their job is to help you fix your form a lot of the time and encourage you to do a few extra reps so you can meet your exercise goals safely and maximize your efforts so that you are working the right muscles. Because as I recently learned, if your hands are up like 3 inches, if you're doing like overhead presses on a bench or something, and your arms are positioned like 3 inches closer to your head, you're not working your chest anymore. You're suddenly working your shoulder, and you might not even notice that. And wow, my shoulders are really burning the next day, or my shoulders are getting tired right now. And then you won't really figure it out until you're like, what if I lower my arms a little bit, like 3 inches? Then you start feeling your chest burn, like, oh, that's what I was doing wrong. That's why I have such strong shoulders.
Yep.
But it's one of those things, like the therapist is kind of like the coach, but instead of like strengthening your body and helping you reach your physical goals, they're helping you reach your mental health goals. And so that's the way to look at it. So Carl saying, I thought the therapist was supposed to fix me. No, the therapist doesn't. The therapist guides you on your path to getting, not just improving your daily life and dealing with it, managing it and everything, then actively fixing the issues that you do have so you can live a better life. It's not the therapist doing the work, it's you doing the work, and the therapist is your guide.
Yep. They are providing a safety net, and they are providing, well, he's sort of a safety net, and they are providing instruction on how to help you. A lot of therapists become life coaches. So the analogy to a coach is actually quite apt. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, here are the things that we can try that will help you. The therapist is the one who's like standing right above your head, hands under the bar as you're lifting weights. Like just making sure that if you drop that bar, and you probably will eventually, that it doesn't completely just crush your rib cage and destroy your heart. Right?
Yeah, and that is actually a pretty. I guess it might also be another thing, because I listened to a few videos recently, and they said that there are some people when they are working out and they're like professional bodybuilders and they're lifting, several, I shouldn't say several hundred, but many 100 pounds of weight, and their trainer alone might not be able to get that bar off of them if they're working their chest to failure, which is usually the best way to actually get growing. So they have multiple coaches and spotters.
Yep.
And it could be that if someone really needs some help, they could have like multiple people helping with their mental health. Like I guess in this case, if we want to go to Carl again, he's depressed and he's on drugs. And he's got some other issues to deal with. So you might have like a drug addiction counselor. That's one spotter. Then you have maybe have like a pharmacist who's giving him drugs to help motivate himself or, get him past his depression when he's not on drugs. So that's another spotter. Then you actually have an actual therapist who's helping him just kind of work through the issues of, crashing his car and, suicide ideation or self-hatred from not wearing a safety belt, and maybe the issues of the breakup that he never dealt with. So that's the third spotter. So just as, professional athletes or bodybuilders might require multiple spotters simply to keep the person from crushing their own larynx.
Yep.
When they fail, when they push their muscles to failure, maybe someone who's dealing with a lot of issues like Carl will actually need multiple spotters in their life as therapists and other professionals to help them get past it. But eventually Carl will, with enough effort on his own part and, the help of his spotters, I'm going to keep calling him that, he will actually improve. He will actually get past it, just like, the weightlifter will gain muscle and be able to push even harder. Probably need a fourth spotter at some point.
Yeah.
But if you need multiple people to help you as a team, or if you have someone who needs multiple people to help them as a team to get past the issues, it's not, it's not awful. It's not bad. That's just what they need. And it doesn't say anything that's like horribly wrong with them.
So fun fact, there's also career therapists, and their entire, like a big part of their job is while you're going, so like this would be more like if a person was doing, it's not in-house, outpatient, and if they're doing inpatient care and they're going to be getting out, and like, let's say employment was a big issue that they were having, there are therapists whose jobs are to find out what jobs they could do and then help them get jobs. And there would be workplaces that, usually through the state, that have positions that open up for these people to get for like 6 months to a year or so that they can actually have a job and have those professional obligations while still having a support network. So yeah, there's pretty much therapists for almost every aspect of someone's recovery. So if they're doing inpatient, they'll have the BHTs, they'll have therapists, they'll have the discharge and the intake planners, they'll have nurses, they'll have pharmacists, they'll have psychologists, psychiatrists, they'll have an entire team of people there to help them. And also, more important, just as importantly, the other patients they'll also be there, and building bonds with those other people are also going to help them. Like they also become spotters in effect. So it's
Yeah, especially
very
in
much
like
this
group therapy.
massive team. Yeah, very much like group therapy. It is a massive team that you build around yourself. So yeah, it's quite apt. We brought up the idea of being hopeless. Guess what? Everyone's hopeless. Why? Being hopeless is safe. If I'm hopeless, well, I don't have to worry about tomorrow. It's hopeless. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Everything's going to fail anyway, right? Who cares? But there's a difference between hopelessness and helplessness. Very few people are truly helpless. Many people are hopeless. The thing about hopelessness is that it's nice and warm and cozy. Because if I don't have anything to look forward to, that's wonderful. That means when I don't do anything today, tomorrow's just fine. Because tomorrow's hopeless. And the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. The moment I start having hope is the moment pain starts. So a lot of people get stuck in hopelessness and they just give up and surrender themselves to it. So when you start having hope in anything, that's when pain starts up again. Because all the pain that you've been ignoring because everything's hopeless, all that pain starts to show up again, and it all reminds you of how much you loved the idea of giving up and retreating into hopelessness. But you kind of come to the realization at some point when you start coming out of hopelessness that you kind of do need to do things. Like, you can be hopeless forever if you want, your entire life, and you'll be miserable because it'll be one of those things where in like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you'll look back on your hopeless life and you'll say, wow, everyone I know is, even the people who are doing badly, they still have families, they still have friends, they still have people who care about them. The only person who seems to give a damn about me is the police officer who picks me up off the street, or, my boss who has something to gain by me showing up to work, and no one else seems to care. We've all met people like this. They're all, in a lot of ways, it's very sad because something happened, they gave up, and then they just stayed in giving it. Then they just continued to give up for their entire life. And sometimes they're really smart, sometimes they're really brave or this or that, but because they gave up and never stopped giving up, because they became hopeless and just stayed hopeless forever and just refused to come out of it because it hurts, nothing happened. Their lives didn't improve. They just kind of got a little bit worse steadily. But again, because everything's hopeless already, they don't really care. It's like if you go from a terrible situation to a situation that is 0.1% worse, well, you don't really care if you don't care. If you do care, now that's a problem. Your life just got a little bit worse, and you want to do something about it. What can I do to fix that? And that's when you start heading towards growth. If you stay hopeless forever, you never grow. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And when people realize that, when you realize that pain is actually a good thing, when pain equals growth, then it's like, well, I want as much pain as possible. When you lift that super heavy weight and your arm hurts and feels funny for like a few days at least, well, that's good. That's growth. It's you getting stronger. When you meet people who have never been through anything horrible or hard in their lives, they are brittle as hell. Anything goes wrong, they can break. You meet people who have really been through a lot of horrible things in their lives, steel. It's like dealing with tungsten. It's like, sure, they might bend, but they're going to come back. So that, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Everyone is hopeless in a way. And
Yeah.
you can escape from that hopelessness pretty easily. I mean, it's kind of just steps, and you have to accept the pain, but it is there. But it is a very alluring thing. I can retreat into it, I can give up, and I can just embrace the darkness, and I can just embrace not having anything to look forward to. Because if this plummets my expectations to the center of the planet, then I have no expectations. I don't expect anything from anyone or anything. I'm going to college, cool. I don't expect to even graduate then, because I'm hopeless. I don't care. Right? So, a person who's trapped in hopelessness, they won't even go to college, usually, unless someone's forcing them to. And then they won't even really apply themselves. They'll just sort of float through it. Because if they get a D and barely pass a class, good enough.
Hey, they passed.
Yeah, D for diploma, right? But that was the mantra of of almost every senior at universities when they don't intend to go for a master's. They just need to get a D so they can get the diploma, so they can get the bachelor's degree. They never intend to go to master's school. It's D for diploma. C for certification. But
what's B for? A's for achievement. What's B for?
I have no idea. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah. Leaving hopelessness is a conscious decision that you have to make, because it will suck and it will hurt.
And sometimes, I guess, once things get bad enough, that's when the motivation to get out of hopelessness reaches its highest. That's when it becomes strong enough. The motivation becomes strong enough to move out of hopelessness, so you can just stop feeling so bad. As long as you're content in hopelessness and it doesn't hurt a whole lot, or you're able to just mask it and escape it, that's when it's okay. And you'll probably remain in hopelessness. But once being hopeless results in you being actively miserable through several ways, and you can't escape the misery and the pain, that's when you'll make a move and move out of hopelessness.
To escape from hopelessness, you have to act. If you're hopeless, your conditions can get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the cloud of hopelessness, the fog, will just get thicker and deeper and thicker and deeper. So it really doesn't matter how bad it is. It can get so bad that you just die. Like, it can get so incredibly bad that, like, you barely exist at all anymore. But if you're hopeless and the hopelessness is scaling with how bad everything is, then you can remain in hopelessness and just exist. But if you choose to act, here's the big thing, here's the kicker. Again, if you choose to act, you are choosing to accept that pain. You are choosing to accept that mantle. You are choosing to accept responsibility. When you're hopeless, there is no responsibility at all, period. You don't have to accept responsibility for your failures. You don't have to accept responsibility for your actions. You can just say, well, it's out of my control. It's hopeless. Why do I care? Nothing I can do about it. But the moment you choose to act is the moment things change. Take Jenna. She was in a hopeless situation that was abusive and horrible, and then she chose to act, and her life got better. She had that mantle of hopelessness around her, and then she decided to get rid of it. She decided to act, and by
she
acting,
had models.
Yeah,
she had others modeling hopelessness and what it does to her, and she realized, I don't like this.
Yeah, and by acting, she managed to start escaping from that hopelessness. By continuing to act, she managed to finally escape from it entirely, or, for the most part.
Yeah, and she actually said that she knows there will be issues she has to overcome, but those are worth overcoming to get to the outcome she wants.
Correct. So Yeah, that's why she's so hard on Carl, is because she sees him as hopeless. She sees the hopelessness that he's going through, and she wants to change that. But she understands that how she gets
Doing
through
so.
that is by grabbing him by his collar and dragging him away until he chooses to act in a way that helps him escape from this.
Yeah, by grabbing his horns and pulling him out of, well,
Yeah.
pulling him into action.
Yeah. And she's not being nice about it, but I have the feeling that she's tried to be nice about it for a very long time. And now she's looking at this and she's like, he's unemployed. He's not in school. He has no ambitions. He has nothing that he wants to go do. He's kind of just waiting for his parents to get fed up with him and throw him out. And then he'll just be on the street. And then he might end up in the exact same situation that she was. But his his veil of hopelessness will probably be a whole lot thicker around him at that point, to where he just never feels like he can escape it. So, yeah, I think she sees that, and she's like, I mean, I doubt Carl's parents would ever properly throw him out, but then again, I don't know how his road goes. But yeah, it's that whole thing of, it's like, you must act if you want this to end, if you want to get better, if you want to escape. You must act. And if that means she grabs him by his horn and drags him out into the desert and forces him to do something, okay. From her perspective, it's worth it.
You have no idea how close you are to what actually happens in this route.
She wraps a collar around his neck, shoves a gag into his mouth, and says, "Shut up, you're coming with me," and then drags him out into the desert and tells him that when he decides to start defending himself, she'll stop throwing rocks at him and just starts chucking rocks at his face.
You're so close.
It's like every time you decide to give up, I'm going to saw off another inch of your horns until you just look like a doe boy.
Yeah, doe boy. So, yeah, I think that's probably a good stopping point, huh?
Yeah, I think so. We talked about a lot of things. I don't have anything else to talk about. But
I don't think we have anything else to talk about. I think we just have probably next week, because we've already spent, like, what is it, 3.5 hours?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I think that's a good time.
All right, everyone. I will catch you all later.
And I'll see you all next time. And until then, bye.
Well, here we are.
Here we are. There he goes.
Let me stand up. Yeah. All right, I'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye, everyone.